Welcome to the Deep Dive. Today we are immersing ourselves in, well, a really dynamic and rapidly changing area. The massive transformation in how we understand and define sex, gender, and identity.
It really is more than just academic. It's a fundamental cultural redefinition. For years, most people used sex and gender pretty much interchangeably.
Right, that was just the standard way.
Exactly. But that basic assumption, it's completely shifted. The traditional binary model is being replaced by this incredibly complex spectrum.
And that spectrum, as our sources point out, it's bringing liberation for many people, but it's also fueling some really fierce debates, politically and socially, all over the world. So our mission here is really to guide you, our listener, through this new train. We need a clear, balanced look at it, all the new definitions, the surprising history, the big controversies.
And crucially, why we need a genuinely nuanced approach. One that tries to step back from, ideological extremes. That feels essential right now. So maybe first, let's just nail down that core vocabulary shift. In the current discourse, sex is now pretty firmly understood as the biological construct. We're talking chromosomes, hormones, anatomy.
Okay, the biology.
Right. Then gender is the social construct, the roles, the behaviors, expectations that society tends to link to biological sex.
Got it.
And sexuality is simply about personal attraction or preference. But what's really fascinating, and where a lot of the discussion is happening, is how fast the definition of gender itself has expanded beyond even those terms.
Okay, yeah, let's unpack that because the sheer number of new identities popping up is, it's staggering. The research suggests we're moving really quickly beyond male-female into what some are calling uncharted territory.
Absolutely. And some researchers have actually tried to map this. There are claims citing upwards of 72 distinct genders being identified now.
72.
Yeah, and the range includes these very specific identities like affect you gender, where someone feels their gender is tied to their current mood or emotional state.
Like how they feel right now dictates their gender.
That's the description, yes. Or gender, which is described as a kind of neurogender that's affected by anxiety.
Okay, wait. That brings up a critical question, one the research itself flags. If anxiety is a trait, maybe even a medical condition, are we potentially seeing a confusion here? Are specific personality traits or, temporary psychological states being mistaken for distinct, lasting gender identities?
That's precisely the core philosophical debate happening. Where's the line between affect, which can change, and identity, which we usually think of as more stable?
Right.
But it's important to note this complexity isn't seen the same way everywhere. Other global research has identified maybe 81 distinct genders, which really underscores how culturally relative gender can be.
And before we go deeper into gender as the social construct, maybe we should ground ourselves quickly in the biological variations of sex, specifically the intersex category.
Good point. Yes, intersex is an umbrella term. It's not one single thing. It covers a range of people born with variations in chromosomes, hormones, or anatomy that don't fit neatly into typical male or female definitions.
So the debate isn't about whether intersex people exist.
No, not at all. The debate is really about prevalence. How common is it? There was an influential claim by Fausto Sterling suggesting about 1.7% of all human births are intersex.
Okay, 1.7%. That sounds quite significant.
It does. But it's been actively challenged, notably by figures like Dr. Leonard Sachs.
And why the disagreement over the number? What's the issue there?
Well, Sachs argues that the 1.7% figure is inflated because it includes conditions like Turner syndrome or late-onset adrenal hyperplasia variations that most clinicians wouldn't typically classify as intersex.
I see. So it's about definition boundaries even in biology.
Exactly. It shows how difficult it can be, even for medicine, to draw really hard and fast lines when it comes to biological sex itself.
Okay, now here's where, for me, it gets really interesting. We often talk about the non-binary movement like it's this brand new, modern, Western thing.
Yeah.
But the sources powerfully remind us that's not the case at all.
No, it's not. Many non-Western cultures have recognized diverse genders for centuries, completely separate from the current Western non-binary framework.
Can you give some examples?
Sure. And these cultural systems are vital to understand because they often predate Western contact and are deeply woven into the local spiritual or social fabric.
Okay.
Take the occult of Myanmar. These are individuals assigned male at birth who, through what's understood as possession by a female spirit god called Mangudun, take on feminine characteristics and roles.
Fascinating. And there are others.
Oh, yes. Throughout Asia and the Americas, in Manipur, India, you have the Nupi Manbi, a distinct community of trans women. Then there are the widely known Hijra communities across South Asia.
Right, often recognized as a third gender.
Exactly. Recognized legally in some places, too. They often have their own unique subcultures, even a distinct language, Hijra Farsi. And moving across the globe, in Mexico, among the Zapotec people, you have the Mux. Or in Samoa, the Fa'afafin, individuals assigned male at birth but raised as a third gender, playing crucial roles in their communities.
So these deep historical roots show gender fluidity isn't new.
Not at all. And imposing a single Western-centric view risks completely marginalizing these incredibly rich local understandings of gender.
Which leads directly into the linguistic challenge, doesn't it?
Oh, yeah.
The current Western focus on new pronouns, gender-neutral language, it's very English-centric.
It is, overwhelmingly so, and it just doesn't translate easily into languages where gender is baked right into the grammar.
Like what?
Well, consider Hindi. The word ling is used for both biological sex and grammatical gender. To even talk about social identity distinctly, they've had to essentially coin a new term, samajik ling, meaning social gender.
Just to create the distinction we now make more easily in English.
Precisely. And think about languages like French or Arabic, where almost every noun, every adjective, every verb conjugation is gendered. Achieving inclusivity there needs completely different strategies than just saying, let's use they, them.
Right. But conversely, some languages are kind of already there, aren't they?
That's true. Languages like Finnish and Turkish, for instance, have used gender-neutral pronouns for a very long time. So the whole pronoun debate that's so heated in English-speaking places, it's practically a non-issue in those contexts.
Okay, so we have this incredible complexity, biological variation, cultural diversity, linguistic challenges, which I suppose naturally leads us to look at the practical realities of transition, and specifically the very sensitive topic of detransition and regret.
Yes, and this is an area where the nuance is absolutely critical. The sources provide statistics that really challenge any simple narrative.
How so?
Well, on one hand, regret after gender affirmation surgery, or GAS, is reported as being very low, generally less than 1%.
Okay, very low for surgical regret.
But on the other hand, a large study looking at over 17,000 participants found that 13.1% reported some history of detransition.
13%. That's significantly higher than the surgery regret figure. What does that mean?
It's critical because it signals that detransitioning isn't usually about regretting the surgery itself, like buyer's remorse. It's often more about pausing transition, maybe reversing steps, or changing one's identity path again. The research really emphasizes how multifaceted detransition is.
And the reasons aren't just internal changes of mind.
Not primarily, no. The data is striking here. A huge majority, 82.5% of those who detransition, cited at least one external factor driving their decision.
External factors like what?
Things like lack of family support that increase the likelihood of detransitioning by 5%, or pressure from family or community.
Okay.
And interestingly, those who'd never actually accessed gender-affirming hormone therapy were 25.5% more likely to detransition later.
What does that suggest?
Well, it underscores how vital access to comprehensive, holistic care is. That includes support that isn't just medical, social support, mental health support, family support. When those external supports fail, it seems the path becomes much harder.
The sources mention specific cases that kind of illustrate this pressure, don't they?
Right.
Like Grace Powell.
Yes, her story highlighted feeling pushed towards sex reassignment as the only available solution for her discomfort and mental health issues. She ended up detransitioning before she was 21.
And Casey Emmerich, too.
A similar narrative. Came out as homosexual, then transitioned quite young, only to realize years later that the transition itself has severely impacted her mental health, leading her to detransition.
And the feeling from both seemed to be that their complex needs, maybe underlying mental health issues, trauma, or just exploring sexuality, got sort of funneled into this single medicalized pathway.
That's the concern they raised, yes, that the system didn't offer enough alternative paths or support for exploring those other issues first.
And what's really difficult, the research points out, is the media situation around detransitioners.
Mm-hmm. It's tough because they often find platforms mainly in conservative media outlets. They can get viewed by parts of the broader queer community as sort of mouthpieces for right-wing ideology.
So they face potential discrimination from both sides.
It creates a really difficult, almost lose-lose situation for them, which just emphasizes the need for a cautious, supportive approach to care that allows for complexity, for uncertainty, even for regret, without judgment or ideological pressure from any side.
Right. And we see these intense identity debates playing out very publicly in policy areas too, especially it seems in competitive sports.
Oh, absolutely. Sports is like the ultimate crucible here, isn't it? You have the drive for competitive integrity clashing head-on with the push for inclusivity.
It seems incredibly challenging to balance.
It is. The debate really hit the mainstream in the U.S. with figures like the transgender MMA fighter Fallon Fox. Opponents immediately raised concerns about potential advantages, bone density, muscle mass linked to male puberty.
Okay, that's one aspect. But it gets even more complicated globally when we look at biological sex testing and differences in sex development, or DSD, right?
Exactly. Much messier. And the cases here are often quite tragic. Think of the Indian runner Santhi Soundarajan.
She was stripped of her medal.
Yes, back in 2006, after failing a sex verification test, the social fallout was devastating. She faced immense discrimination, even attempted suicide. And although she later became a coach, the stigma reportedly continued.
That's awful. And Duty Chand, another sprinter.
Right. Fellow Indian athlete Duty Chand was barred because of naturally high testosterone levels. But her case went to the court for arbitration for sport.
And what happened?
They actually ruled in her favor, finding there wasn't conclusive evidence that naturally occurring high testosterone provides a performance advantage across the board in all events. It showed the system itself is struggling to keep up with biological reality.
And the recent controversy around the Algerian boxer, Imane Khelif.
Another example highlighting just how little public awareness there often is about DSD. The sources stress there are at least 40 different conditions under that umbrella.
40. Wow.
Yeah, it really underscores how potentially arbitrary the current methods for deciding biological sex in sports can be without a much deeper, more individualized understanding of human biology.
Okay, connecting this to the bigger picture, we also have to consider the role of, well, industry. Specifically, the medical and pharmaceutical industries.
Yes, the research brings this up quite directly. It uses the historical, tragic case of David Reimer as a stark warning.
Can you remind listeners about that case?
Sure. David Reimer, born Bruce, suffered a severely botched circumcision as an infant. Based on the theories of psychologist John Money, who believed gender was entirely learned, a social construct, David was raised as a girl, Brenda.
But the gender reassignment didn't take.
No. Psychologically and physically, it was a disaster. He struggled intensely with his assigned gender, eventually transitioned back to male, but suffered severe depression and ultimately died by suicide in 2004.
Such a devastating story. And it's often cited to challenge the idea that gender is only about social learning, that biology plays no part.
Exactly. It serves as a powerful cautionary tale against oversimplification from any direction. And it leads right into contemporary concerns about what some researchers call the transgender industrial complex.
What's the concern there?
It's the observation, grounded in research, that pharmaceutical companies potentially stand to benefit significantly from lifetime prescriptions, hormones, other medications that often follow transition procedures.
A financial incentive.
Yes. And given that financial interest, combined with the fact that we still don't fully understand the long-term consequences of some of these medical pathways, the research urges caution in policy and practice. It's a call for careful consideration, not outright rejection, but definitely caution.
Okay, so finally, let's look at the theories trying to explain the increase in people identifying as queer. It's statistically highest among Gen Z or Zoomers. Is it social contagion or just more acceptance?
This is a major debate, pitting two main viewpoints against each other. On one side, you have the theory of social contagion, perhaps most notably suggested by Littman.
What does that theory propose?
It posits that, especially for adolescents who might lack strong social anchors, identities could potentially be adopted or influenced by peer groups.
And there's a mechanism proposed for that.
Yes, something called co-rumination. Basically, the idea is that peer groups repetitively discuss shared problems or identity questions, and this intense focus might unintentionally reinforce certain behaviors or identities within that group.
Okay, that's one view. What's the counter-argument?
The counter-argument, which is backed by studies like one from Turbin and colleagues, is much simpler. The increase is primarily due to reduced social stigma and far greater societal acceptance.
So more people just feel safe enough now to be out and identify openly.
Exactly. It's not that there are necessarily more queer people fundamentally, but that more feel able to acknowledge and express who they are. And importantly, that Turbin study specifically found no evidence to support social contagion being the main driver behind the rise in the queer population.
Interesting. And the research itself, how is it analyzing this whole discourse?
It's often using the lens of critical theory, which, focuses on power dynamics, systems of domination, and inequality.
So how does that apply here?
From that perspective, the research critiques the traditional gender binary for how it systematically marginalizes non-binary people. It also examines how non-binary identities are sometimes portrayed detrimentally in popular culture.
And what's the goal of that critique?
Ultimately, the critical theory angle advocates for emancipation, which means freedom for individuals to explore and express their identities without the constraints of societal pressure and, critically, without ideological extremism from any side shaping their choices or care.
Okay, so bringing all this together, the complexity, the debates, the theories, what practical steps does the research suggest? What's the path forward?
Well, the research culminates in several pretty clear policy recommendations. First, developing standardized, inclusive assessment protocols before any gender reassignment takes place, meaning protocols that ensure all factors are considered: psychological well-being, cultural background, socioeconomic situation, family support, not just a medical checklist.
Okay, comprehensive assessment. What else?
Second, mandatory diversity training for healthcare providers and policymakers. And this training needs to focus specifically on understanding cultural diversity and the varied socioeconomic backgrounds of people seeking care, moving beyond a one-size-fits-all model.
Makes sense. And third?
Third, establishing robust support systems that explicitly address the possibility of regret or dissatisfaction or the decision to detransition.
So people aren't left isolated or pushed into that lose-lose situation we talked about earlier.
Exactly. Ensuring there's support, understanding, and resources available, no matter way someone's journey takes them. The overarching goal is care that's balanced, nuanced, and truly informed by the most complex, up-to-date research we have.
We've certainly covered a huge amount of ground, from biology to global cultures, detransition stats, the role of industry. It's clear the conversation around sex, gender, and identity is moving incredibly fast.
It really is.
And while the increase in acceptance and inclusivity is undeniable, it feels like our collective understanding is still catching up. We're definitely navigating into some unknown territory here.
I think that's fair to say. And that really underscores the central theme, doesn't it? Nuance matters more than anything.
How so?
Well, the research actually notes something interesting about the term snowflake. While often used as an insult.
Right, dismissively.
Yes, but it suggests it could almost be reclaimed to recognize the very complexity we've been discussing, that each individual exists somewhere on this incredibly diverse spectrum, making them unique, intricate, like a snowflake.
That's a provocative reframing.
It is. And it leads to the final thought. If current research is indeed challenging the idea that gender is purely or only a social construct, what does that mean for the balance we need to strike? The balance between acknowledging biological realities, respecting vast cultural relativity, and supporting informed individual identity exploration.
A difficult balance to find.
Extremely. But we have to commit to ensuring that all decisions, whether personal or policy about identity and care, are as informed, as balanced, and as nuanced as possible. That seems to be the key takeaway.